Bosque plant propagation area update number 2. What are we going to talk about today, Sherilyn?
We're going to talk about the plant propagation area. We're going to talk about some really sad things. But we're going to start with the plant propagation area.
Oh, shoot. Okay, so we've got purslane on the menu. We've got blossom end rot on the menu. We've got grape arbor, grape
Sure,
trellis.
yeah, absolutely. We've got death and destruction on the menu. And we have some really successful things going on.
Crime and punishment.
Well, let's hope there's some punishment.
What are we going to start with?
We're going to start with some volunteers that are happening in the plant propagation area that I find really, really exciting. It's one of my absolute favorite plants. It's called purslane, and it is a very nutritional weed that happens in many, many gardens. And I'm very, very excited that it's happening a lot in the plant propagation area. There's a pot right here that has some purslane in it, and essentially it's a bit like a vocabulary just went out. It's a succulent type plant, and it can be used in salads. It can be used just snacking, which I'm going to do right now. It has a bit of a lemony flavor.
Can I taste some?
Super, super tasty. Yeah, pick your own. I'm not sharing.
It's like a waxy leaf, and you put it in salads, or you just snack on it in the garden?
I snack it in the garden all the time. When I work at a farm in Oregon, I'm snacking most of the morning on purslane when it's available.
Yum.
But there's lots of salads that you can also put it in. You can do cucumber, tomato, purslane. Some people do all purslane and herb it up quite a bit. You could check online. There's lots of recipes for purslane. But yeah, I like it a lot. And there's probably 6 different buckets that have purslane going in it right now. You can pick it back to the first 2 nodes that happen, and the 2 leaves that will come out from that will be like a whole new plant. So the harder you pick it, the more purslane that you will have to eat.
And are we going to move some of it around to get more sun since it's a succulent, or what kind of organization are you doing here in the plant propagation area?
Basically, my organization is not focusing on purslane, but wherever the purslane is, we'll probably let some of it go to seed. And then when the rains come, we'll spread it all over the place. And Brian says that it's all over. I've only seen it in buckets so far, but I trust that it will come up in other places and other gardens as well. But for now, since we don't have a lot of fresh food happening, that is a very exciting fresh food that we can just start snacking on.
There is a fresh food thing coming up that's kind of exciting. It's one of the most growth areas that we've seen in the plant propagation area. Should we go there next?
Sure. Tomatillos, I actually harvested a few of them this week on a plant from the plant propagation area, and they can be made into a sauce.
So that looks like a mighty big leaf of a scarlet runner bean.
It's a scarlet runner bean, yeah. And it's big enough to be able to tie a twine onto the bottom of it, and I put it all the way up over this really big beam. They're going to get pretty heavy and prolific, so they'll twine up, and then we'll start harvesting beans. And I would say within a couple weeks we'll be seeing flowers that are just beautiful. They're red, and and beans shortly thereafter, I'm hoping.
And the bush beans next to them are doing pretty well.
Yeah, we actually overplanted this pot, and so I have transplanted some into other buckets, and then I believe you also transplanted some into another garden.
Yes.
And they're looking okay up there. I did add a little bit more dirt because we took some plants out, and we want to make sure that the dirt's level wherever we, remove something, because you have to take some dirt with the plant when you remove it.
And what can you talk about with regards to these leaves and these leaves being different?
So generally on a plant, the first 2 leaves that come on are not what we call true leaves, and any leaf that comes after that is called a true leaf. I can't remember what the first 2 leaves are called, but so that's for any plant. So sometimes it takes a little bit of time to figure out is that a weed seed or is that the plant that I planted and was expecting to come up? But once the true leaves come up, it's a lot easier to tell. Mm-hmm. We also have cucumbers coming up, and the true leaves are coming on to 2 of these, but they're growing. They were planted at the same time as the scarlet runner beans, but they're just taking their time, pretty slow. The other exciting thing right here in this area is the tomatoes. We have lots and lots of volunteer tomatoes in this plant propagation area. I would say there's over a dozen happening right now. Probably tomatillas, a slightly less amount of plants. But unfortunately, this particular plant had blossom end rot. So that's a issue I'm pretty familiar with in Oregon. I did not expect to see it here. It has, let's see if I'm going to explain this right. It has a lot to do with nutrition in the soil and the way that you water leaching out nutrition.
And something to do with calcium too.
Calcium, exactly. So if you overwater, you can leach too much calcium out of the water quickly. So when you see blossom end rot, essentially at the bottom of a tomato, it'll start going flat and turn brown and look like rot. And so you want to remove those and put them in the compost pile, get them far away from the rest of the area, and start watering more evenly. So we're not going to heavily water these, like dumping water in. I'm doing like, a cup a day. And then when it's a watering day, which we're watering this garden every 3rd day, do a little bit more than that, so that there's not a bunch being leached out. And I'm probably going to top dress these with something so they have a little bit more food as well. Tomatoes are heavy feeders, so we want to make sure they have what they need. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to use for that. Potentially we can use some compost tea or some manure on the top that's a little bit composted.
So we've got some seeded things, some volunteers. You said you had something to say about the figs?
Yes, there's some figs growing. We have, I believe, 3 different kinds of figs in this area. I'm going to go on the other side so the light's right for the video. And so there's a plant here that had, I think, 4 figs on it this morning, and I actually picked a couple of them off. So you can see this little like gluey stuff here. And the reason why I did that, so when these figs got planted, they did not get well labeled. And since there's 3 kinds of figs, I'd really like to know and have them labeled for when we're going to take cuttings from them and spread them out. I'm really heavy into labeling. So if we leave 1 or 2 per plant, then we can type it by I know the 3 kinds that were planted, and so I can figure out which one's in which pot and then label the pot. So I'm excited to see, this one has 2 on it as well, and I can probably, I might be able to even identify them before they actually are fully fruited. One in particular is one of my favorite. It's a king fig, and it's pale green on the outside and red on the inside, and super sweet and yummy.
How old do you think these fig plants are?
These cuttings were from last winter.
Okay.
So they were little sticks and put into the ground last winter.
And they'll produce fruit this year?
They will. Typically, if they were well labeled, we would potentially take all the fruit off so that the plant is putting all of its energy into becoming a nice strong plant with really, really good roots. But because we can't identify them, I am leaving a couple fruits on each plant.
Did you talk about the willows last time? Because you said we have 3 different types of willows here. I thought that was interesting coming from a basket maker to know what's happening here in terms of willows.
So there's quite a few buckets of willow here, and last year let's see if we can find a good, this one we were playing with, we wove it. So that's not very typical when you're planting willow. But like over here next to your knee, that was one stick put in the ground. And you can see that there's well over a half a dozen willow, we call them whips. So there's at least half a dozen willow whips coming off of that one stick from the ground.
This is the stick.
That's the stick. Yeah. And so each one of those whips, when it goes into dormancy, can be cut and then dried, and then there's a soaking process, and you can do a willow basket out of this willow. It's all European basket willow, and there's very, very small and very, very big. Also, the willow can be used for live arbors, live chairs. I've done wigwam huts that at a school in Corvallis that kids actually could climb on like a jungle gym. And the permaculture guy there actually started a second story on that wigwam.
Wow.
So you can actually do architecture with these plants.
There's a really nice sculpture in the Botanical Garden in Washington, D.C. I don't know if I was telling you about that. But an artist who has trained, I think it's a type of willow, into a really cool sculpture that's got all these sort of like, you know, cavernous spaces that you can run around through. It's pretty cool.
Yes. There's so much fun that you can have with willow. And I didn't know if the European basket willow would do well here. I didn't know if it would go into dormancy or not. It did go into dormancy this past winter, which is really, really exciting, which means that it can be used for baskets. And yeah, I'm excited. So these are all going to be potentially, these are like the mother plants, and they will be used to plant out eventually into, you know, architecture, and there's all kinds. You can do live willow fences. So yeah, these will be the mother plants we'll use. And then each whip, you don't, if you're doing a fence, you would plant the whole whip, like 6 feet of it, and weave it, and then it would grow, and it will very easily vocabulary graft together without any work at all. Like you don't have to score it or anything like that. And a 6-foot whip, if you're planting out like a row of willow, that can get cut up into 15-inch lengths, and each one gets planted. So you can reproduce willow really fast and easy.
Well, it seems you know a lot about pruning and sort of guiding plants into how they grow and that kind of thing. Can you tell me some of that, what you told me about grapes? Because we have a grape growing here. We're going to see another grape in the pool garden that we moved.
Yes.
But forgetting the French word you used to describe it, the spalier. Yeah.
You would have a better accent
there
than
you
I.
go. But these grapes we have a few grape plants, right?
Right, there's again 3 or 4 different types of grapes, and so again, these are mother plants here that we're hoping to put permanently somewhere, but for now we're just letting them grow and do their thing. Typically with a grape you would take off like 70% in pruning every year to keep it tight and to keep the fruit to have more abundant fruit and sweeter fruit, happier fruit. We're going to let these kind of go so that when we end up doing the pruning, that we can use those cuttings to create new plants, because there's not as many now, and these are all delightful eating grapes, and we would like as many as we possibly can. There's also a native grape that happens here that's not so tasty, and so there's some ideas around grafting some of these really yummy fruiting grapes onto some of the native vines and seeing if that will help in any way to make these strong and robust here in this climate. Not sure what they're going to do in this climate or how they're going to be, but it is a Mediterranean climate. It seems like an ideal location to start grapes.
Cool. As a means of another update, what's happening with the Napa cabbage and the mint and the ground cherry, the green onion, the basil?
Yep, so the Napa cabbage has its true leaves. We can tell what's going on there. A lot of these other ones, They're just happening really, really slowly, and we're not exactly sure if these are weed seeds coming up or what we planted.
These look like weeds that we're seeing everywhere,
Yep,
so
yep.
that's a little bit deceiving.
Yeah,
That's
it
not
really is.
what
I
we
don't
hope.
see any green onions. There's a couple here that I do see as a potential
I see
basil.
I see a basil maybe.
Nope, that's grass.
That's
that
grass.
could just be pulled out. We have also, I planted in buckets at the other end of the prop garden some more of the same, and those have not come up at all either. There's also more cucumbers. These cucumbers here are slicing cucumbers that are happening really slowly. We also planted pickling cucumbers, and I have not seen those germinate yet. Yeah.
Anything else for the plant propagation area?
There's been some weeding, some organization, some, like moving stuff around, but no, I think that covers it pretty well. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. So the pool garden.
Pool garden. A lot has changed.
Tell me about what's happening in the pool garden.
Our murder mystery is here.
Ah, murder mystery.
So that's pretty exciting. But there's a lot of new stuff. So let's go on in. First with the gate that we repurposed from an old chicken coop.
Excellent.
The chicken coop's still there, but a new gate was built. It's very rickety. It has just a few nails to keep it in, but we're trying to keep some critters out, and so we thought maybe a gate would be good.
Excellent.
Come on in.
Lots has happened since the last time I was in here.
Yeah, so the first thing you notice, we have some more water systems in here. Usually there are not a whole lot of water systems for gardens here because Brian really likes to just see what survives and just put everything everywhere. Right. We decided, we do have water down at the plant propagation area, which just comes by means of gravity from the cistern or the turret, as he calls it. But we decided to bring some water here, which we got from the big black tank at the back of the lodge. So I believe that actually may have been gravity that brought it here too.
Yes, potentially.
But we brought this bad boy down here so that we could have enough water to get our annual vegetables, root vegetables and salads in the pool garden watered regularly. So.
And where does the water come from?
The water comes from the sky in the rainy season, gets collected through rainwater catchment from the big roof of the lodge, dumps into the cistern. It gets pumped up to the big black tank, which is like, maybe has like, I don't know, a few thousand liters, and then this probably has, I don't know, a couple hundred or something.
Okay.
But we've been using like 2 or 3 of these buckets of water to water this garden just about each day.
Okay.
But we may have to change some of those watering schedules as we have some plants actually growing and they don't want that much water. Some fun things just to show around what we've been using here, because we repurpose a lot of things here. We don't go out and buy new things if we don't need them. This is an old watering can, lovely watering can that was totally out of use because it was totally broken down at the bottom here. So we got some epoxy from the local hardware store. I think before someone had used some resin to fix this, which didn't really last too long. And maybe this epoxy won't last either, and it's not exactly the most natural, but pretty easy to work with, a 2-part epoxy. We fixed this right up, and it works quite well.
Yeah.
We also use these buckets, and we use a little cup to water, and then this is a fun little invention that I had. I think we showed it maybe in a video, maybe not. It's a Gatorade bottle with a little nozzle at the top tied with some string and a bunch of little holes in the bottom of the hose there. And we have fun kind of giving a shower to our plants.
And the purpose of using the little tiny holes is what?
Well, because the little baby seeds are too small. And so you can see actually sometimes it doesn't work too well. We introduce a little bit of air by tilting the top of the bottle here. And it's a nice little rain shower for the seeds.
Right. So that you're not disturbing the seeds that are so small.
Exactly.
Got it.
I'm going to give some water to these, wherever this geranium is here. Finish that up. And because I'm a saxophone player, sometimes I like to just go ahead and
get a higher pressure going.
Finish it off.
So tell me about this trellis that wasn't here last time.
I think it may have just been here because we had to record the video a little bit later.
Ah, okay.
But yeah, this trellis was built so that we could give some structure to the tomatoes.
And what's new on the trellis from the last video?
I don't think that we had reinforced the trellis, so basically just to re-explain, we cut down some oak trees up at the view recently to try to improve the Wi-Fi signal here at the Bosque. And instead of cutting down some more trees, we found 2 trees we'd already cut down and brought them down here with the van. Found some nice forks so that we could position another longer tree in the center, and that worked quite nicely. We did cut down one tree, which was this pine tree.
Okay.
And this came from a little grove area that Brian has a plan for right near the view, and that was pretty quick to cut down because the pine is really easy to cut. But it's pretty strong. There's a little bit of flex in it, but I think the new thing is that I sort of wrapped all of the connections and reinforced with these cross braces here. And then
I heard rumors about dowels. Did any doweling happen?
there was a dowel that happened in one of these. Basically, the same on the other side. This brace, which is kind of complicated and it's kind of like a see as you go kind of thing. I put a dowel right through these 2 trees on the other side. So I drilled out a hole with a long drill bit that's about this long. Serial helped me hold the trees together as we went through. It was kind of fun to like crank through the whole thing with a hand tool, not using any power tools. And then the dowel I took, I think I took an old dry oak branch, because what you're supposed to do is to take a live tree that's sort of green, or not live, but recently cut, and then take a dry piece, make the dowel out of that, and then when you put the dry piece in the live, the more green tree, it basically absorbs all the moisture, the dowel expands, and then it locks in. The drill bit we had was only about maybe a 1/2 inch drill bit, and so as I'm hammering in the dowel, I think it cracked somewhere. So that didn't really, it was a fun experiment more than anything. But I also experimented with a bunch of different sort of like structures here. You can see that if you pull on this, it's very strong, keeping in with this guy. If you push, you've got this guy up here, and these are just notched and kind of tied together to keep it all together. But this is not going to be like a forever arbor. We dug the posts about this deep into the ground, so they'll be strong, but the rot eventually. So that's okay.
But it'll work for this season's garden, no problem.
Yeah, exactly. We talked about the grape when we did the plant propagation video. This is a grape that we just brought and left in the bucket. You could explain probably better than me why we left it in the bucket.
So grapes, when you plant the grapes, you want a really sturdy, permanent structure that's going to be long-term for them to grow on. So because of what you just explained about this particular one not being a really long-term one, this gives some structure for this grape to grow this season, but there's a potential for it to move to another permanent location later, either to have a more permanent structure placed here that it grows on, or it moves to another location. But this is going to give the grape, like when I talked about pruning a grape 70% back, this gives at least one arm of this grape a very long distance to grow before it gets pruned.
So how far do you think it'll grow from here?
Oh, many, many, many feet.
So it'll go all the way across this trellis?
Absolutely. I think it'll easily go all the way across the trellis, and then potentially down on the other side. And as you can see, there's 2 going off, and then each node on the grape will also put off another plant. So those will be pruned back, but the other one arm will go up this trellis and all the way over, and potentially another arm will go, like up to that cherry tree. We can do a piece of twine from this trellis to that cherry tree and have the other arm go up, because again, all of that, when we cut it, we just need like 4 nodes to do another grape plant. somewhere else.
Great.
So yeah, there's a lot of potential here having that bucket where it's at.
Cool. Happy to have it too. It'll make it pretty. But we left the bamboo in here just to kind of. We'll always leave it, I guess, and it'll just leave the bamboo and jump onto the oak.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yep.
Down below, as means of an update, we have tomato seeds that we planted. I think we talked about those last time. Nothing showing. It's only been a week. Some of the volunteers, if we get Serial behind the camera to step back and not trip, the volunteers are doing a lot better than when we first planted them. They were a little bit unhappy. So these ones aren't fruiting yet. We haven't really trimmed down these lower branches, but they're much stronger than they were. We actually put an old costal bag, little bit see-through, over them during the day. That's why you see these taller posts. You kind of gave them a little bit of a greenhouse. We planted some peppers that we grew from seed, just from peppers we'd eaten. Some hot peppers, some bell peppers, some of those banana peppers, and most of them died. So we can see some of the leaves in here. They just didn't make it, but one of them survived. This guy here, so we'll see if that continues to.
So pretty small for transplanting, and you said you have more of those plants.
We have like 25, probably more, that we'll bring. We're gonna take care of inside a little bit longer before we bring them over here.
So maybe letting them get past their true leaves quite a bit before you transplant them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
This tomato here, we installed our first string, and what we're gonna do, as you described, was just to train it around the string as it goes up. So it's just gonna follow the string up and wrap around it, and hopefully grow 8 feet tall.
Yep, we'll have a wall of tomatoes. It's gonna be cool.
Yeah.
So what about some of these little ones that are going on in here?
These are the bush beans from the plant propagation area. So this is another transplant that we brought here. Some of these leaves are curling a bit, and this one is a little bit questionable, but these new leaves are coming in here, so we're not too worried. We're just gonna see what happens. We've got one bush in each area because we think they're gonna be about this big, and this is kind of where the circular keyholes stop and where these little other sections are in between. But we did plant another one here just to see, like, which one's gonna survive.
Right. Yeah, looks great.
So that's exciting.
So last time I was in here, I didn't see the screens. What are the screens about?
Yeah, the screens are part of the murder mystery. So we talked yesterday about the fact that a lot of our lettuces, beets, radishes were eaten. So our babies were eaten. We were pretty upset with that. So we took some of these screens that are sometimes used for the dehydrator, but there's a bunch of extras. We just put them in here for one night to see if it was a critter, like a squirrel or a rabbit that was getting in here and munching on them. What we can see today as we lift them up, I haven't really looked at all of these, is that they were eaten anyway. So if you come in here with the camera, we can see that our little friends have been here and done their damage. So I would say, no, that's good. You think that's good?
I think that's the one from yesterday.
Okay, that might be good.
And the one just next to your hands?
This one here?
On your left?
Oh, in here.
They are still alive.
Okay. So you can kind of still see where some of the sticks that we laid down to mark where we'd planted, these guys are doing fine, which is great. So nobody's been over here to eat these guys, and these are all planted in a line. You can see a bunch of them here. So this is a lettuce?
Arugula.
Arugula. The arugula did really great also in our bucket, our empty water bucket garden. So it's no surprise that it's doing really well over here. To take up another one of these, we were protecting here maybe some spinach.
Some lechuga.
Lettuce, lechuga. So these guys are still intact, so that's good. This is probably just a weed. There were a bunch of weeds here, so you see a bunch of weeds coming back. These ones are some kohlrabi. So the kohlrabi are just coming up. We planted a couple different types of kohlrabi. That looks like the roja, the red one. We've got some basil and mint planted in different areas here, and then radishes. And the radishes, wow, actually these are doing pretty good compared to what else we've got going on in here.
And that was the first major death you had, was with the radishes, right?
What's really surprising is that we planted these radishes much after the first ones, and these ones are like doing better already. So it could be something about the soil, could be something about these other ones getting eaten. Let's take a few more of these screens away and check out what else is going on under here. So here the idea was to plant beets and radishes together. And it looks like, see here you can see the little hole that looks like it was chomped out of that, what looks like a radish.
That have been eaten
Yeah.
yesterday.
Couple have been eaten, so.
Looks like some new ones coming up over there.
Yeah, the radishes are okay. Maybe they like the beets more. This is a beet, I believe,
Yeah.
and it looks like it's been chomped a bit. That seed's still on there.
Yeah, it'll come off.
So hopefully,
Hopefully the screens are doing their job.
maybe the screens are doing the job, maybe
Yeah.
not. We also talked about putting flour down on the on the path
Right.
to see if we could catch the footprints of whatever it is coming here. All we've seen so far really are little ants and little millipedes, so it could be that kind of stuff too.
Yep.
Um,
There's also snails, slugs, although I see no slug trails that I hear about in this climate. And yeah, there's a book that I brought down today that we can look at to see if there's other insects that we can keep an eye out for.
Cool. The last thing in the pool garden that we did plant was a garden of chards here. Some of these leaves, though, we think are very similar to a lot of the weeds that we're seeing everywhere. So we're not so sure that those are actual chard leaves, and we're just going to wait and see what they actually do.
Wait for the true leaves to come and then identify it better.
to pull them up or not. Because we planted to the left of these little sticks here, and they're not exactly coming up where we thought.
Right.
On the other side, we have
Chard.
more chard, and nothing's really coming up there yet. So we're just playing the waiting game. The tomatillo in the corner here that we brought in here is kind of doing just mediocre, just hanging out, not producing fruit, but we do see some flowers on it, so that's great. That's about it for pool garden.
Excellent.
Anything else you're wondering about?
No, I'm just curious about the mystery of who's doing the eating and when we figure it out.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we'll have to update next time.
Yeah. Update to come.
When?
So here we are in our lettuce garden area that's done in the water jugs, and we have quite a bit of success, a little bit of failure. So where the success is, we're actually ready to do some thinning. We've got quite a bit of lettuce going here, lechuga, and so this week we'll be thinning this out a little bit for like little microgreens. Our arugula is looking lovely and is ready to have some thinning going on. And in between here, you can see that there is some lettuce that didn't do as well. There's maybe 3 lettuce plants in here, and they're happening very slowly. So I've replanted any of the pots that are a little emptier. So that one, this one here I filled in. And then this is a chard, a rainbow chard that only one plant came up. So I put some more rainbow chard in here. And this lechuga pot at the end got dumped in the moving when these pots moved from the other side of the building, and we lost them all. So I've just replanted that whole thing. Also the spinach, the true leaves are getting nice and big. We'll probably be able to start harvesting those in another week or so. And then we'll do some thinning when they get pretty big. That's another chard that you just looked at. And yeah, I'm really happy with our tub garden. We're about ready to probably start our next round of these tubs. So we'll get, I guess we've got, I don't know, 9 more, no, yeah, 9 more buckets in this area and do a whole nother garden to get started.
Brush piles! This is from the orchard, which we didn't even know was here. But once we started clearing all this stuff away with a machete, we found there's a beautiful orchard here. And so we're trying to make it more beautiful. Follow me. Aguacates. We're gonna go buy some of these from a farmer down the street today who has many more trees than this, but this lovely avocado tree was totally strangled by all of these. We don't know if they're annual, perennial. They're perennial, I guess. These weeds that all come and we're all, all taken away for that brush pile. We wanted to kind of clear the rain skirt of, where the tree hangs over of each of these trees, so that we could give them some mulch, give them some fertilizer, maybe some chicken poop, and let them really grow and succeed. I'll bring you back to show you some of the other trees that are in here. I don't think we've done a full tour of this. So we did start giving some of these plants water, which we're just doing from like laundry wastewater, sometimes soapy, sometimes not. We figure that not too much soap will be all right. Up in here we can see there's kind of a semblance of some paths that used to be here. This was all really overgrown. We cut it all back. Back there, if you just point the camera to the side for a second, we've got a little area that was used for compost at one point, which we're going to reuse so that we can hopefully attract some worms and other composting critters or bugs that we can then take to the pool garden in case they don't find it by themselves, to improve the soil quality. Some of the trees that are here are not sure what this one is, but we've got 3 apple trees back here. This might be an apple as well. Some apples growing on these guys. So we've been giving them some water and even some just fresh compost to these guys. You can see the compost is still just rotting at the base of the tree here. A lot of the brush we kind of are leaving on the ground so that it can just rot and decompose away. These are 2 other apple trees that we've got. Follow me through some of these paths and you can just kind of take a look around at what this looks like. I think we do have some footage of what this looked like before we did all this clearing, so you can just kind of see what will happen to your orchard if you don't prune it and take care of it and cut it back. So this has been kind of like a little bit of a sort of detective mission for us, trying to figure out what has gone on here over the years. I'm sure Brian could tell you in more detail, but we found some cool things like, first of all, just these great trees planted everywhere. And then some sort of watering systems like these PVC pipes that are going into the ground. We've got lots of magueys that are growing here. The magueys live about 7, 8, or 9 years apparently. They look like they've been here forever, but they do have a lifespan. Really big maguey over here on the side. Hope the sun is not glaring too much there. We just take a walk around here. We can see that some of these trees are starting to show some signs of improvement. It's also maybe just getting later in the year. Things are changing. You can see some magueys here that are sitting underneath a lot of this brush that we've taken back. So in other areas where you don't see a bunch of clumps like this, it's because we've actually dug them up within adze. So we haven't gotten to this area yet. We did clear, we had a bunch of PVC gutters that were sitting by the pool garden. We cleared those away just to kind of clean it up a little bit around here. We've got a few fruiting trees here. Brian can tell you what they are. As we come all the way to this one by the pool garden, we've got some fruits on these ones. So here is an orange-like or some sort of citrus that we're excited to see what's going to happen with. And then some of the bigger trees, like this one, you know, look almost dead, but we've got some signs of life. So if you look straight up, some signs of life here. And then if you go into some of the corners, more signs of life. This looks like a peach. So these peach trees will hopefully fruit for us this year. We've got some great peaches here. So that's a little update on the orchard. And we hope next time you see it, it will look even prettier, and we'll hopefully have some fruits growing. Thanks.